How's it going, everyone? This is your Astrology Horoscope for this wonderful lunar eclipse in Pisces that we are having this evening at 7:34, roughly, here on the West Coast. So, as the sun is setting, we're going to see the full moon rise, and right as the moon is rising and the sun is setting, the eclipse is going to be exact. And, of course, Mercury will be opposing Saturn, and as the moon is rising, it's going to be rising with Saturn. So, with Saturn involved in this lunar eclipse and Mercury at opposition to Saturn, with Neptune at the end of this lunar eclipse, because right after this lunar eclipse happens, the moon will meet with Neptune. So, there's a lot that this eclipse is bringing in when it comes to physical reality and our non-physical reality. There is this kind of remembering and awakening, and I feel like also the remembering and the awakening is really us realizing where we were in 2008, where we were in 2011 when Neptune moved into Pisces. Because the last eclipse that we had in Pisces in 2007 was right when Pluto was ending its transit through Sagittarius and moving into Capricorn, going into 2008. And Saturn was also in Virgo. So the last Pisces eclipse we had, the lunar eclipse, Saturn was in its opposite sign. Pluto was just moving signs. It's pretty incredible that this lunar eclipse that we're having right now, we have Saturn in Pisces, and we have Pluto at the very end of its transit through Capricorn, preparing for its full 20 years in Aquarius. So, what is this bringing up? Well, I think there's a lot of criticism with this eclipse, right? There's a lot of criticism where we have not been aware, where we have let things go, where we have let things slip. You know, this Mercury in Virgo at opposition with Saturn, right as this lunar eclipse is happening, Mercury's sending a message to Saturn and the moon and Neptune. And we're going to have that Mercury cazimi with the sun this week going into next week. So there are messages coming through, you know, and they're very critical messages, and they could be very harsh, right? With Mercury at opposition with Saturn, we know that we are entering into a grand transition here. We've been in a grand transition, but this is that moment. And I really feel like it really is that moment where it starts to tip, right? The water starts to pour. We're leaving the age of Pisces into Aquarius. Aquarius pours the water to give to Pisces, to allow the flow and the stream to flow for us to swim in divinity, right? So, what is happening now with this Pluto in Capricorn? Because this eclipse happening right at the very end. It's going to be in October, November, and December when Pluto fully is going to be in Aquarius. And it was that lunar eclipse we had in 2007. In 2008, when Pluto was finishing in Sagittarius and fully going into Capricorn. So it's like these Pisces eclipses, the last one and this one, is what is ending these Pluto cycles. Okay, and Saturn at opposition from 2007 to now with this, it's really mind-blowing to see how the relationship between the last time we've been here, the last time we went through this, and what we're going through now. It's perfect, and this is why astrology is so beautiful. You know, it's not about the signs necessarily. It's not about, you know, your chart. It's not about the chart. It's about the planets first. The bodies and their relationship and their movement and their electromagnetic relationship, and that we are now in the same transition as we were in 2007. The last time we had this same exact eclipse. It's really magical. So we have to look at that time. How have we evolved since then? How far have we come? Well, I can definitely say when Neptune came into Pisces fully, and Saturn was in Libra, getting ready to move into Scorpio, it was the spiritual awakening we started to see across the collective. And it started with people questioning health stuff, right? Virgo, Pisces. All of a sudden, Netflix is pumping out all these health documentaries. And I've talked about this a lot. But when I observe it from then to now, it's pretty clear. It's very clear. And this eclipse is making this timeline very clear. How have we physically and spiritually and subconsciously evolved? And of course, with Pluto, we're talking about unconscious evolution as well. The collective unconscious. Okay? I think what's important to really look at is to look at the transition from that time, 2007 and 8, 2011, to now. Okay? Chiron was also in Pisces during that era, 2011, with Neptune and all of that interesting stuff that we were experiencing with Neptune and Pisces. You know, it was very, very strange, 2011, 2012. And when we get into the Mayan calendar stuff, like that also supports what I personally witnessed. And I think a lot of us can agree that was the moment where we started seeing people awaken. We started seeing people question things and share information, and, you know, the internet at our fingertips. This was before the algorithms were so overly controlled and dominated by a small group of people with an agenda, right? It was kind of the Wild West when you really look back at it. And I think looking back at those times, we didn't see it that way. We was just like another day, right? Now looking back, it's like, damn, you know, there was less control, less grip on these things. There was a lot more information that allowed the awakening to occur. Now it's like, it's that awakening is becoming real in a physical way. I remember in 2011 when Neptune came here and Saturn was in Libra, you know, Pluto was fully in Capricorn. It felt like, oh my God, like the world's waking up. People are going to start, you know, and it was much more of a fantasy or delusion in that sense. And you'd see it all over social media. You saw it in music and culture. You know, it was like electronic music culture blew up. The drug culture and festival culture blew up with Neptune and Pisces. And of course, Uranus ending its transit in Pisces in 2007 and 8. Before Uranus came into Aries. And Uranus and Pluto came into Aries very much at the same time, just like right now as Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are changing signs. So it was that same era, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, where Pluto, Neptune, Uranus was all changing signs. The last time he had these Pisces North Node lunar eclipses, right? And of course, we won't see the North Node move into Pisces fully until January. And that's what's kind of been, if you remember, in April 2023, we had that lunar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries, right before the nodes actually moved into Aries. So it's always these 0, 29 degrees where it's kind of in and out. You know, the veil is thin right there. Of course, being in Pisces, it's like there is no veil. It's just straight into the infinite. So I think what's important is to really reflect on that evolution. 2007, 8, 9, 10, Saturn in Virgo, Pluto moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn. That last lunar eclipse in 2007 we had in Pisces. To really understand where you're at as an individual with these eclipses, it's very important. What lessons have you learned? You know, what difficult lessons, you know, what spiritual lessons, you know, the critical observations we have about ourselves, other people, our reality, critical opinions about other people's spiritual beliefs. Of course, Virgo and Pisces, it's like, yeah, Virgo's like, I understand what you're saying and I feel what you're saying. Show me the details, show me the facts, you know. And if we look at the beginning of this transition, we didn't quite have the details. We didn't have the facts. The initial spark and awakening was just a feeling. Now being on the other side of it, you could see it becoming more real, right? We're seeing the whole celebrity culture die off. We're seeing the whole we're seeing now, as of course we're in Pluto Capricorn, we're in massive political times and transitions, the health thing that's popping up now. We're finally acknowledging on a physical, realistic, practical level what's really going on. It wasn't those last lunar eclipse in Pisces and Uranus in Pisces and Neptune. It wasn't that era where we were actually seeing the reality of it. We were just becoming intuitively aware of it and waking up to the deception. And it was like, okay, we'd wake up to a certain level of deception, and then it's like, oh yeah, we figured it out. The whole 2010 decade. And it's like all of a sudden there's a new layer of like, oh shit, like that too. It's just been this unraveling, and now there's obviously a great divide and a great split between where people are at. And I think this lunar eclipse too, it's like people are either in fantasy and delusion about what's really going on, and there are people here, and with the sun and Mercury is trying to give you realistic, practical information. So with this lunar eclipse, we have to be in that spiritual, divine place, and share our spirituality and share our intuitive, philosophical, spiritual feelings that we have with others, right? But in a practical way. And I think if we can express that in a practical way and actually provide details, we can come to an understanding instead of this being this, well, I'm practical, I have the detail, I have the facts, you're delusional and irrational. It's like, well, it's like this, this moon, Neptune, and Saturn saying, it's like, okay, well, you can call me delusional and Neptune, or you can call me delusional and, whatever. But it's like, you haven't experienced what I have, right? So it is about the physical experience that we can all see and all objectively look at, say, yeah, we agree that happened, right? But when it comes to our own purpose and our own divine connection and our own spiritual connection, it's like, that is for you, and if you are here to inspire and share your story or your spiritual growth that can inspire other people's spirituality and awakening and growth as well, which is important. Or, we're seeing Christianity and religion, like really people all of a sudden, like, I'm a Christian now, right? Which is fine. Like, but it's like, we're getting to this point now where it's like, are we going to keep dividing people based upon their race, gender, sex, religion, beliefs, or are we just going to look at reality objectively as individuals and collectively and understand the layers of the individual to the collective? And Pluto in Aquarius is going to be teaching us that. And maybe we're not quite there yet, but it is like, if you look at where we were at the beginning of this 16 years ago, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, and where we're at now, it's like, yes, that spiritual awakening was real, but now it's real in a way of like, okay, like, drugs are bad, drugs are, alcohol is bad. We have to, because it is. I just remember in 2011 moving into Pisces, drugs were a thing. The rave scenes were a thing, and right, and there was this relationship between drug culture and spirituality and spiritual awakening. And I think we can look back to 1967 in the 60s and the same thing, the psychedelics and the spiritual awakening and the collective, having this whole new dissolution of their programming to see what's really going on. And, whatever your stance on psychedelic drugs are, that's what they do on a scientific level and from personal experience. I think, they're important tools, but now it's gotten to this place where it's like, okay, like, we're trying to integrate psychedelic medicine into, people with mental illness, right? That's what, when we're talking about Virgo Pisces, we're talking about physical health, mental health, all this stuff. Looking back to when this awakening began, it began with an initial shock. Uranus and Pisces, a shocking spiritual awakening. Uranus moving into Aries, Pluto moving into Capricorn, Neptune coming into Pisces. Now we are on the other end of it. So this awakening that we've been going through, this lunar eclipse wants to end the bullshit. It wants to end the illusion and deception and the fantasy about it. And it's like, yes, we've gone through that. And you have to enter into the irrationality to even get to a logical conclusion or hypothesis or whatever, you know. This eclipse is helping us get through to the other side. Let's take this spiritual awakening from the irrational of where it began and let's make it real, you know. Because the initial awakening begins on an individual level. How do we influence that on a collective level? By sharing our own individual experiences of healing, right? Chiron and Aries, the individual healing. We're going through that collectively. This individual healing, that North Node Chiron really kicked it off. Of course, it's not been easy with the nodes being where Chiron's at and the eclipses being where Chiron's at. But it's like, you know, we're starting to move to the other side of that. And also this eclipse too is not only awakening our own internal deception of how we've deceived ourselves, you know, we have to look at it. Pisces in the 12th house and Neptune is just so interesting because it is these intuitive hunches that nobody else would understand. If you're 12th house sun, Venus, Mercury, Mars, any personal planets there, like myself, the only personal planet I don't have in the 12th is Mars. I understand this language very well. And it's like no one is going to understand your own divine connection or purpose or even language, you know. You'll find the right people to connect with. But not everyone is going to understand, nor is it our job to make everybody understand your own spiritual awakening and growth. But the irony about that is, it's like when you have that first initial awakening, you want to just tell everybody, you know, and share the world. And it's like, we just need to dose the water supply with LSD and then everybody will just wake up, right? I think that's everybody's first initial awakening. In some vein, maybe your awakening has nothing to do with psychedelic drugs. A lot of people's it did, especially with Neptune. And people from my generation who are my age especially, like a lot of people can relate to that. And of course, if you look through history, it had a lot to do with it. I mean, it's probably at the top of the pier of people really awakening to what's outside of our physical reality. So it is now with this lunar eclipse in Pisces and these nodes coming into Virgo and Pisces come January. This is going to be the lesson. This is going to be the karmic play out here, right? We're kind of getting a pregame of what this is. But not only are we getting a pregame, this is also closing out 2007, 2008, 2011. You know, and even when the south node was in Pisces and the north node was in Virgo, when we had that. And Chiron was in Pisces at that time. So this is a very magical, of course, with anything with Neptune and Pisces, it's always magical. But Saturn's here. So the magic is real. You know, I've experienced magic my whole life, what people call magic or people call the unexplainable. My entire life of trusting my own intuition and getting from one place to the next has been fully surrendering that, you know, I have nothing right now, but I know if I just trust this feeling and this intuition, I'm supposed to go here, it'll take me to the right place. And of course, that's what Pisces teaches us. Saturn is teaching us as well to surrender to the flow and to the divine experience that we have within, you know, and that is our own. That's not for the rest of the world. Of course, the details about the experiences that we're having as individuals with Mercury and Virgo opposing Saturn. We want to share our experiences collectively, okay? It's really easy with this eclipse and Mercury opposing Saturn to be overly critical of other people, overly critical of yourself, overly critical of decisions you've made in the past, right? Pisces being the past, Neptune being the past. This lunar eclipse wants to close out the past and help us move forward and not be stuck in the past. Okay, we're going to have that North Node in Pisces in January. We're moving forward, okay? And what North Node in Pisces is going to teach us is like, okay, what from our past that's relevant now should we take and what should we leave? What's good for our mental and spiritual health? And mental, physical, spiritual health. That's Virgo Pisces. That's what it's all about. So, and this is about the individual. Of course, with Pluto and Capricorn, the transformation we're going through with the institutions collectively, it's a big fucking deal. And it is the big deal. And Neptune is supporting Pluto still. They're still in support. I don't, think that it's going to play out the way the fear is being propagated. I really don't believe that at all. It doesn't look that way whenever we get to November and December. Yeah, there's going to be some fishy shit, and facts are going to be very... the facts and the details and the truth is going to be a massive conflict as we go into the end of the year, going into this nodal shift we're going to have in January. So let this eclipse separate 2024, right? This is the peak, right? It's like since January we've gone up. Here we are. We've peaked here. Now it's like we're going towards the other end of 2024. And this is where it's not going to look the same. This is a very impactful, important moment. And I think, too, on an individual level, this eclipse is going to really change people's lives spiritually. I think being open to having a deep spiritual experience or a connectedness to something that's greater than you, I think maybe for some people who maybe are atheistic or maybe have no spiritual belief or they don't care or nihilistic, they don't believe in anything, or, I think we can really start to influence each other to really come to a state of understanding that, this world is made up of a lot of different ideas. There's not one way to believe in God, not one way to believe. Of course, the age of Pisces, that's been the fucking battle the whole time. It's like, this guy says it's one way, it's my way. You believe in God my way. You believe in your divine my way, okay? And it's like all these different groups and different peoples trying to deceive you to believe in their way for their own power and their own gain. It's like now it's like, we have Christians, we have the Muslims, we have the Jewish people. We have the nihilists, we have the atheists, we have the astrologers. And that's another factor too. It's like in 2007 and 8, 9, 10, 11, astrology was like totally under the surface. And it was in 2011, 2012, 2013. And the interconnectedness of the internet, bringing astrology to people, bringing, esoteric, occult information, people making videos about their studies and, astrologers coming to the surface and it was a weird thing to see. Even as someone who's been studying astrology since 2003 and it's been in my family and in my blood my whole life, it really was like kind of shocking to see in 2011, 2012. Because for me, I remember in 2008 and 9, astrology was a big part of my life, but it was a big part in my own individual, nobody knew. My friends had no idea, I would talk about it, but I didn't feel safe to share, there's no way that the programming and the relationship between people where we could have these conversations and, be accepted, not be outcasted. So it's like we're on the other end of that, where it's like the astrologers, there's so many astrologers on the internet, like sharing their perspectives and sharing their version of it, and it's an art form. Astrology is an art form. It's not this is how you do it, right? There's so many ways of looking at it, and of course my experiences influences how I look at the astrology, and of course I am learning new things every single fucking day about astrology and different sects of astrology and the history of astrology. It's like, it's really cool to see that we're on the other end of, not being totally underneath the surface. This is now, of course, Pluto moving into Aquarius, where it's like there is an understanding that the individual, like we all are made up of the same shit, but, we don't have to believe and think the same thing. I think with that dogmatic approach that the age of Pisces, that this eclipse, I believe, is fully trying to get out of the way so we can move into Pluto and Aquarius and the age of Aquarius, which is going to take hundreds of years. If you look at the transitions of ages, it really is about a 200 to 300 year. If you look at events and history that was playing out in the transition of those ages, like it's always a couple hundred years where it's like fully integrated, because it's a 2,000, 2,500 year cycle as we process through the ages. Of course, the nodes process backwards, right? Because the ages are determined by the poles of a planet or the moon. Like the north and south node is determined by the north and south pole of the moon, as in a simple way to put it, right? And the nodes are always moving what seems to be backwards compared to everything moving forward, right? That's why when the nodes change signs, it's always at 0-29 degrees when the nodes change signs. So when the North Node comes into Pisces, the North Node is going to end at 0 degrees Aries and move into 29 degrees of Pisces. So, and I think most people here who are astrologers or seeking astrology have understood those kinds of things, which is really amazing because even those conversations being integrated into astrology nowadays is pretty phenomenal. So, and of course, Venus in Libra here is kind of alone. It's moving into a lonely land right now. So, and it's off of its opposition to Chiron. So there is this relationship healing that is taking place. And of course, with this eclipse, this is going to make a massive impact on our relationships as well. And Uranus is in support of this eclipse as well, loosely. It's 2 degrees off, sextile to the sun, or trine to the sun, and a sextile to the moon and Saturn. It's off of it just a bit. And of course, Uranus supporting Neptune. It's like we can make sudden shifts if we're willing to actually move, right? Uranus and Taurus get stuck, and Uranus has to just shock the cattle, like a cattle prod. That's the best way to describe Uranus and Taurus. It's like a cattle prod. So there is support to make a massive change with Uranus supporting the Neptune and Saturn at this moment. So when we actually get through to the other side, I could really imagine that like the electrical kind of pulse that's pulsating through this eclipse is going to really shift us into unexpected territory in a positive way, because the support with Uranus with this eclipse is very positive. Now with Pluto here lurking again by itself, it's like we have to deal with all this Capricorn Pluto shit that we are not in control or in power of, right? So that is outside of us. What can we do as individuals to really influence each other, to evolve spiritually and physically, to help each other get to a much more better physical, spiritual place? Uranus is supporting that, and I think the sudden shifts that we can lay into reality, or at least in a way of, commitment. Like we have to commit to actually making a change. And Saturn rising with this moon tonight as the eclipse happens, that's what Saturn is really saying with this eclipse is, if we're going to make a difference, if we're going to make a change, if we are going to actually evolve to a better spiritual place and help each other on a spiritual level and influence each other in that sort of way, we have to make a commitment. And that commitment has to be serious, and it has to be long-term. And we have to imagine what the long-term is going to be here. We're going to have a long 18 months with the North Node and South Node in Pisces, which we won't see until January, like I said. But this is a commitment to releasing the past. This is a commitment to actually breaking through the deception in our own delusions and the delusions of, the media being ruled by Neptune and Pisces, 12th house stuff, It's like there's a lot of deception that is being cast right now. And this Mercury opposing Saturn is really helping us connect the dots in a realistic way. Be like, oh, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. That's real. You could tell. Right now, the veil is so thin. You can tell where the deception's coming from, and you can tell where who's really actually being genuine and actually delivering positive, good information that is actually useful for people. And yeah. Anyways, this is gonna be dropping right as the lunar eclipse is gonna be happening. So I hope you guys are ready for this and what we're moving into. Of course, we're gonna have the next eclipses in Aries and Libra, the final Aries Libra eclipses of this nodal transit before we're fully in North Node, South Node, Pisces, Virgo. So allow this one to really open up a brand new future for all of us, because this is closing out 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, Saturn, Virgo, Neptune moving into Pisces, Pluto moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn. We are fully on the other end of that as this eclipse is happening. So this is really exciting and a massive transition and a massive transformation for us as individuals and the collective and every structure in the world that has created the world that we exist in now on a physical level. And of course, this lunar eclipse in Pisces is reminding us that, yes, we have to be individuals on this planet physically, but we also have this relationship, and we are nothing without what we are a part of that we can't see and that we cannot control. Surrender is always the lesson of Pisces and Neptune. And of course, Saturn and Pisces, that will be the ultimate lesson once Saturn gets to these same degrees where Neptune's at now. So anyways, I hope this was helpful, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace out. Have a good one.